Hello and welcome to the first episode of Antinatalism this week of the year 2024. And it has been an amazing start of the year because there was so much content produced in this week. I actually struggled to catch up with it. So let's see what we have. One of the common arguments thrown at antinatalists is that if everybody stops having children, humans would go extinct, implying that that is a bad thing to happen. Now, there are many nuances to this within human extinction and even beyond human extinction. Mati Hairi published a paper analyzing the relationship of antinatalism and extinction. Titled Confessions of an Antinatalist Philosopher, Hairi explores different alternatives about extinction before confessing which flavor he mostly favors. Mati draws a scale of natalism as shown on this diagram. To simplify, on the leftmost end are the people who think that we have a duty to have children. These are strict pro-natalists or anti-antinatalists. On the right extreme are the people who think that we have a duty not to have children. These are strict antinatalists or anti-pronatalists. In the middle are those who think that it is either good to have children or not good to have children, but we don't necessarily have a duty either way. Mati confesses that he is on the right extreme of this scale, that is, he is a strict antinatalist. This chart shows classification of antinatalism in relation to extinction. As you can see, the main division is between non-extinctionists and extinctionist antinatalists. Within non-extinctionist antinatalists, there are those who are okay if biological reproduction continues. Now you might wonder, how could this even be? These are actually what I myself have referred to in the past as local antinatalists. That is that they oppose procreation in certain pockets of space and or time. For example, we should not have children now because we are overpopulated or there is climate change happening. But once those problems are solved, we could have children sometime in the future. Or only those in certain overpopulated countries or regions, etc., should not have children to reduce a burden on their resources. Alternatively, there could be conditional antinatalists who would say that we should not have children, but others can. Mati prefers to call these selective pronatalists as the focus shifts on who should have children selectively. The second category is where biological reproduction stops, but we don't go extinct. From here on, there is pure imagination as it involves sci-fi-like scenarios. We develop technologies to make existing humans immortal such that they never die but don't reproduce new beings. This way, we don't go extinct, but we are all antinatalists. This might be a problem for those who feel the drag of immortal meaninglessness. So this can further be divided into the world where right to one's own death is granted or denied. Still on the sci-fi dream, Mati evaluates the possibility of virtual human continuity, that is, mind uploading to a computer or some variation of that. But he eventually rejects this as antinatalism because in the process of this mind uploading, what would most probably happen is the biological human is annihilated and a new digital entity would be created. So the continuity of identity will be broken, resulting in creation of a new person, albeit a digital one. Note that all these non-extinctionist, antinatalist or selective pronatalist variations only deal with human non-extinction and human antinatalism. The complexities of other species in this respect were not evaluated in this paper. On the extinctionist side, we have three value-based categories. One which deals with human extinction, that is anthropocentric, which in turn can lead to voluntary or involuntary human extinction. Under the biocentric axiology, that is, if you value entire biosphere positively and think that humans are causing damage to it, then you might want human extinction to happen too, like the case of voluntary human extinction movement or involuntary human extinction. If you think all sentient beings by definition have to go through suffering and that is a bad thing and you would want extinction of all sentient beings, then this would be sentiocentric view. In this, you would want human extinction as well as extinction of those species which are bred by humans either for consumption and companionship. This will also include a case for wild animal extinction. Here I thought this diagram got a little confusing, so I made my own version of this diagram. In this diagram, the first classification is not on axiology, but on whose extinction we are talking about. So under the general umbrella of extinctionists, there are anthropo, that is human-centric extinctionists. They would want humans to be extinct because humans suffer based on philanthropic arguments of antinatalism, so that is philanthropic extinctionism. On the other hand, humans as species species in general are known to cause a lot of harm to others. This includes harms to other humans, harms to other animals, or harms to entire biosphere in general. The last one is where the likes of Let's Unite and their voluntary human extinction movement is located. The implication of all these is human-centric antinatalism, that is to stop bringing new humans into existence. Sentiocentric view includes human-centric concerns, hence the dotted arrow between the two. But on top of that, it also includes non-human animal suffering. This includes animals bred by humans for human consumption or companionship. This would require stopping of production of those animals. For the animals which are not bred by humans, they are either stray dogs and cats and so on, or wild animals. We already have widely accepted practices of sterilization of stray animals, but sterilization of wild animals does not enjoy that luxury, and it also involves a lot of complexities. So here you see we started with extinction and ended on antinatalism as an implication or a means to bring about such extinction. But we can flip this diagram as seen here. We can start with antinatalism and we land on corresponding types of extinction as a consequence of antinatalism. So which one is better? This brings on to another point which Mati makes in the paper. Barring the imaginary case of human immortality, extinction and antinatalism cannot be thought as two distinct consequences of our decision to have children, at least in the case of humans. Mati says, and I quote, "If our aim is to eliminate coming into existence of manipulated, harmful or suffering beings, our work is not done before manipulated, harmful and suffering beings cease to be born. The outcomes cannot be separated." End quote. But we can still think about the direction of cause and effect. And here Mati takes an analogy. Imagine there is a doctor who wants to treat a patient who is in severe pain. The doctor can give that patient pain relieving medication. And it might be that in that process, unfortunately, the patient dies. It's an unfortunate consequence, but it would still be acceptable to most of the people. On the other hand, if the doctor administers a lethal dose to the patient in order to kill him, to liberate him from this pain, it would not generally be acceptable. Similarly, we can think of antinatalism as the medication to prevent suffering and extinction as a consequence of that action, albeit a regrettable one. In the words of David Benatar, and I quote, "The central question about extinction as applied to humans is the prospect of human extinction something to be regretted? I shall answer that although the process of extinction may be regrettable, and although the prospect of human extinction may in some ways be bad for us, it would be better, all things considered, if there were no more people and indeed no more conscious life." End quote. If extinction, on the other hand, is our goal, then we have to think about thought experiments like pushing the red button, which will annihilate all the beings, or at least all the sentient beings, instantly. Benatar has denied pushing such a button on the accounts of annihilation as well as preference frustration. David Pierce has agreed to push such a button. Mati also says that he agrees to push such a button, but also notes that this is purely a thought experiment. He would not support development of such a button in real life because it could lead to larger suffering and a lot of rights violations. Finally, Mati confesses where he is on his chart. He says that he agrees with the positions for stopping of human reproduction voluntarily and production of animals by humans. He is not for involuntary stoppage of human reproduction or wild animal extinction. So there is an article on a website called dvait.org talking about connection of Buddhism and antinatalism. Before we look into the actual article, let's have a look at the name of the website itself. It is called Dvait. Dvait Vedanta, which it refers to, is one of the many philosophies or one of the many schools of philosophies in Hinduism. Dvait means dual. So dualism is the idea that God is a different entity than rest of the things in the world, like soul and matter and so on. This is in contrast with Advait Vedanta, another school of philosophy in Hinduism, which says that God and soul and matter, everything is one, just manifests differently. Anyway, the article talks about the connection of Buddhism and antinatalism. The title is Unveiling Buddhist Stance is Buddhism Antinatalist. The central idea of Buddhism and also Hinduism, there are a lot of similarities between these two religions. On a very high level, is that this world that we are living in is not a good place to be in because there is a lot of suffering here. We are caught in this world in the cycle of births and rebirths. So even if we die, we don't leave this world, we are reborn as some other being. And so, because this is not a good place, we should strive our liberation, we should strive to break this cycle and get liberated out of it. This goal of liberation is prescribed to every individual by these religions. That is good, but what has this to do with antinatalism? There are 3 points on which these religions touch on antinatalism. One is the recognition that this world is not a good place to be in is also the first step of modern day antinatalism. Secondly, according to these religions, the root cause of why you're caught into this cycle of birth and rebirth is the desires towards worldly materialistic things that you have and the attachment that you have towards these desires, including the desire to have children, the desire to procreate. And if you want to get liberated from this cycle, according to these religions, you need to detach yourselves from desires, including that desire to have children. So you don't have children if you want to get liberated, or at least if you want to be on the path of liberation as per these religions. This is where the second point where these religions touch upon antinatalism. But they don't go full antinatalistic. They don't say that everybody should just stop having kids. The cycle of birth and rebirth has some logic in it, or at least as per them, there is some logic in it. Once I die, I am reborn. What sort of life I'm going to get after my rebirth is dictated by what sort of deeds I do in this present life. This is also called karma. Karma actually just means actions or maybe duties sometimes, but it has evolved to mean consequences of one's actions as well. So this karmic logic dictates what sort of life I'm going to get in the next time when I'm reborn. So if I'm doing good deeds in this life, I'm going to get a good life. If I'm doing bad deeds, if I'm doing some sins, I'm going to get a bad life. I'm going to get a life of more suffering the next time. Every individual being, according to these religions, is traveling on a journey in this cycle of birth and rebirth. It's their own journey that they are traveling through. But it is also thought as a good deed, as a compassionate deed to help other beings to progress in their own journeys of this birth and rebirths. So now I have to make a decision whether to detach myself from all the desires, including the desire to procreate and not have any kids and be on the path of liberation, or to have some children and help those beings progress in their journey of births and rebirths. That is why these religions don't go full on antinatalist. One of the many solutions that they provide is the way they prescribe structure of the societies. Broadly, they divide the society into two different classes. One is the ordinary people like us, and for them, according to this article, the correct way is the middle way, which is mindful family planning. So the idea is don't have many children, don't have children at your will, just have children of whom you can take well care of. And the other class of people are the nuns and monks and sadhus and rishis, for which it is prescribed they follow stricter rules, they are on the path of liberation themselves, and in a grander sense, they have the responsibility of ensuring that the rest of the Buddhist or Hindu society is also on the path of ethics and ethical path of liberation. So this is the third point where these religions touch on antinatalism. This divide is similar to Catholicism in the sense that Catholic priests and nuns also are celibate. They don't have children for the well-being of the grander or greater Catholic society. The difference is that Catholic society, whether it is ordinary Catholic people or whether it is priests and nuns, they're staunchly opposed to family planning. Whereas Buddhist society, or at least in this article, family planning is promoted. I personally don't believe in all of these things, but it is always good to know different points of view. There was a new free book published this week called Antinatalism, Abortion and Existence by Julio Cabrera and Akerma. It is essentially a dialogue between Julio Cabrera and Akerma on the topic of abortion and how one can be anti-abortion while also being an antinatalist. The two different concerns about procreation are non-harm principle, which is based on harm caused to the being, and non-manipulative principle, which is based on the manipulation that we end up doing of the children. But the interesting point is that you can be an antinatalist and still have some kind of anti-abortion stance. There was an announcement of a new book by Amanda Suknik from Exploring Antinatalism and Mati Hairi. The title of the book is Antinatalism, Extinction and the End of Procreative Self-Corruption. The book is not out yet. The publication date stated here is 11th of April 2024. The book seems to be divided into three sections. The first section goes to the history of antinatalism, mainly around Western tradition and the thoughts about antinatalism in those traditions. The second part talks about the relationship of antinatalism and extinction, specifically human extinction. And the third part analyzes that if it is wrong to bring about suffering by having children, and if even then people are having children, then parents are corrupting themselves. The book is going to be available on open access on Cambridge's website, is what it says. So I am very excited, looking forward to read this book whenever it comes out. So it was suggested that the word antinatalism or anti-natalism was included in Cambridge dictionary recently. Although I have a feeling that I've seen this even a few days ago. But nonetheless, let's have a look at what Cambridge Dictionary is saying about antinatalism. First thing it says is that antinatalism is the belief that it is morally wrong to have children, or that people should be encouraged not to have children, which is only partially true for two reasons. One, antinatalism is just not about human children, which probably is implied, even though not stated explicitly in this sentence. And second, antinatalism is more of a recognition that coming into sentient existence is a harm, and the principle of not having children is an implication of that recognition. Anyway, that's what this dictionary says. Then it says antinatalism may sometimes be motivated by environmental concerns, and that is true. Sometimes for some people it is motivated by or because of environmental concerns. Next is antinatalism. The belief that it is morally wrong to have kids often comes from negative perspective that all life is suffering. Again, a partially true statement, and we'll revisit this again in the examples. So let's have a look at the examples. So it says fewer examples. I don't know why fewer examples. It could have said few examples. The philosophy of antinatalism dates back to ancient Greece, but has recently exploded in popularity on social media. Yeah, okay. Antinatalism is more likely to appeal if you have a bleak outlook and see all human life as a sad and miserable. I'm not sure if this is entirely true. If this means that we are ignoring, as antinatalists, we are ignoring the parts of pleasures and joys of life, we definitely are not. We recognize that there are pleasures and joys and benefits in life. It is just that before coming into existence, we are never deprived of those pleasures and benefits of life. Next, antinatalism is a philosophy and a social movement in which people choose not to procreate, especially for environmental reasons. Again, I don't know how true this is, especially for environmental reasons. Some people at some point in time, are motivated or have antinatalist motivations which are rooted in environmental reasons. But that is not the core antinatalism. I don't even consider environmental antinatalism as actual core ethical antinatalism. Next, it is hard to imagine how antinatalism could ever be widely adopted since it runs counter to so many biological drives. And that is true. No serious antinatalist is under the delusion that we are all going to adopt antinatalism and go extinct. David Benatar also talks about this in his book at the very start of the book. People who subscribe to antinatalism essentially believe that world would be better off if humans didn't exist. Again, only partially true. The sentiocentric strand of antinatalism believes that the world would be better off without any sentient or conscious beings. And Benatar also refers to this, although his book Better Never to Have Been mainly focuses on human procreation. At different points in the book, he has pointed out to conscious beings, conscious life, and sentient beings. And since we are talking dictionaries, let's also look at the entry about antinatalism in Oxford Reference. This has also been there for a long time, as far as I know. And my friend Amanda tells that Oxford Reference is slightly different than Oxford English Dictionary. Nonetheless, Oxford Reference is some kind of dictionary, and it has an entry about antinatalism in it. So let's have a look at that entry. It says that antinatalism is the view that on the whole, it would be better that one were not born and that one ought not to procreate. The view is grounded in a pessimistic characterization of the value of living, but it does not imply that one ought to commit suicide or kill others. And I thought this was a better description of antinatalism than what we saw in Cambridge Dictionary. But also to note that this only is partial description here because the rest of the entry is hidden behind some kind of paywall or some kind of access. Nonetheless, it is nice. There was an article about human extinction and development of artificial intelligence, whether artificial intelligence would drive humans extinct. It talks about a survey conducted on 2,700 artificial intelligence researchers, 58% of whom think that there is 5% chance of humans going extinct because of AI. There was also this podcast by Brooks-Kistler, I think, interviewing Amanda Suknick and Lawrence Anton on the subject of antinatalism. Pondering Procreation, the Antinatalist Perspective by Brooks-Kistler. It's a very short and sweet and crisp podcast, only 8 minutes long, talking about antinatalism. Talking of podcasts, there was a podcast on child-free women. So the main subject here is child-free rather than antinatalism. But the main thing is that it is on Indian Express website. Indian Express is one of the very famous mainstream newspapers in India. And they have a podcast on child-free women calling Choosing to be Child-Free Women in India, which is an interview of Dr. Amrita Nandy. Dr. Amrita Nandy is also the author of the book Motherhood and Choice, Uncommon Mothers and Child-Free Women. And in this podcast, they talk about the challenges that women face and women in India specifically face about being child-free. So very important podcast from Indian point of view. Talking of child-free women, there was also a new article on theconversation.com. Should I have children? Why Society's Idealization of Motherhood Benefits No One by Pragya Agarwal. It mainly talks about the challenges faced by women and child-free women and the thought that motherhood is the default position for women and so on. Wikihow has 11 steps about how to be an antinatalist. It is nice to see that antinatalism is being mentioned on these popular websites. Let's have a look at what those steps on Wikihow are. Do not start any additional lives. This is no-brainer. You are an antinatalist, so don't give birth. Use contraception. Be responsible in your actions. If accidents happen, seek out an early abortion. Although some antinatalists might disagree with this last point about seeking early abortion. Nonetheless, don't start new lives is the bottom line of this step. Learn about antinatalism. Read books about antinatalism, articles and papers about antinatalism. It refers to the book Better Never to Have Been by David Benatar, which is a book every antinatalist must read and read more than once. I have been reading it all along and I keep on reading it again and again, referring to it. And there are so many other books and articles and papers coming out every day about antinatalism. So yeah, reading must be an important part of being antinatalist. Consider how your antinatalism will express itself. And the step here warns us that the idea of antinatalism is not a very popular idea. And even if it is known to some people, most of the people are hostile to accepting that idea. So we need to be very discreet about how we talk about antinatalism, to whom we talk about antinatalism, and when we talk about antinatalism. I personally generally am very careful when I talk about antinatalism in the outside world. Now that does not mean that we should not do activism about antinatalism, but we should be careful about the time and place about, when we're talking about antinatalism. Discuss the philosophy with other people. Now, this applies to any of the ideology that you might adhere to. We are, after all, a herd animal, so it feels better to talk things which you agree with people. So build a community of sorts, talk to other people. There are Discord servers, communities, there are Facebook groups. There's a large presence about antinatalism on Twitter. YouTube videos, even making YouTube videos is one way, commenting on those YouTube videos, talking to other antinatalists, or even talking to pronatalists also sometimes is helpful. Be informed about various religious perspectives. And this is important. A large part of antinatalist community, I believe, is atheists. So the question arises, why would antinatalists be interested in religions? Well, the thing is that many different religions have many different antinatalistic references in their literatures and texts. So it is present in Buddhism, in Hinduism, in Islam, in Christianity, and many different religions. So it is always good to know different points of perspectives about this subject. Consider non-human suffering, and this step is so important. This step actually has divided antinatalist community to an extent because there are some people who don't accept non-human suffering or don't want to consider non-human suffering or don't consider that within the realms of antinatalism. I'm just going to read this step through because it's so important. Extend your antinatalist philosophy to non human sentient beings and work to minimize their suffering as well. Treat animals compassionately. This may include eating a vegan or vegetarian diet. By the way, vegan is not a diet. It also includes abstaining from any of the animal products, animal services, and so on. Not owning pets or only keeping rescue pets or taking care of animal products you consume are from animals who are treated humanely while alive. So yeah, non-human animal suffering is one of the extremely important part of antinatalism is what I think. So I agree with this. Prevent unnecessary pain. And I think this steps talks more about the pain towards yourselves as antinatalist. So basically, don't kill yourself. Antinatalism does not mean that you should be killing yourself, although many antinatalists also believe in the right to die position, which is different than just committing suicide. So if you are having trouble, facing problems, feeling depressed, you should seek help. Keep in touch with others. So, antinatalism, once you are an antinatalist, it becomes a very important and big part of your life. But make sure that it does not occupy the entire all of your life. You should still have other aspects of life. You try and have a good social life, try and have good enjoyment and pleasures. Make sure you are still deluded enough to enjoy life. Share honestly. And I don't know if this is a step only for antinatalists. This would be for anybody. Just share honestly. Just be honest. So I'm not sure if this is to do with antinatalism or this is just to fill in the steps to achieve a certain number of steps in the article. Take care of your health. Again, this applies to everybody, antinatalist, pronatalist, everybody. So I don't know why this step is here, but yeah, take care of your health. Don't be a downer. And what this means is antinatalism is a pessimistic philosophy. Reading about antinatalism, sometimes you yourselves might feel depressed and you might go out and make others depressed as well. So we should make sure that we are not ignoring the pleasures of life. After all, antinatalism is not denying the pleasures and benefits of life for existing people. So those were the stories that I could collect this week, but I'm sure I've missed many of them because there was just so much content produced this week. So please let me know in the comments what I've missed. Thank you.